Xyrris's descent into Earth's atmosphere was anything but graceful. His ship, a sleek Thylani vessel designed for exploration, now sputtered like an injured beast. Sparks erupted from the console, and an acrid smell filled the cockpit. The ship groaned as it tore through thick, unfamiliar clouds, leaving a fiery streak across the twilight sky. Xyrris's many-limbed body moved in frantic precision, his translucent skin glowing faintly in the dim emergency lights. His hands glided over the control panel, attempting to stabilize the ship. The display screens flickered, bombarding him with unintelligible Earth language and a strange, rhythmic sound. Chirp, chirp, chirp. It wasn't coming from the ship. It was coming from outside. He ignored the noise, gripping the console as the ship hurtled downward. His ship's AI buzzed. Impact imminent. Brace. Xyrris let out a silent sigh, his form tightening in resignation. He'd survived asteroid storms and gamma flares. This planet would not be his end. The ship plummeted into a dense forest, scattering debris and uprooting trees. It came to rest with a metallic screech, leaving a smoldering trench in its wake. Smoke and the scent of scorched metal hung heavily in the air. Outside, the forest seemed eerily still, save for the distant rustling of leaves. Xyrris hesitated, his large reflective eyes scanning the exterior through a cracked viewport. The alien vegetation swayed in the breeze, casting shifting shadows that seemed to move with intent. His heart pulsed rapidly in his chest, a drumbeat of both relief and apprehension. He activated the ship's translator. A mechanical voice chirped, "Atmosphere, breathable, life forms detected within 50 meters. Warning, unknown hostility." Xyrris's form twitched. Hostile life forms? He tightened the straps of his explorer's harness and activated his bioluminescent shield. Stepping out of the wreckage, the first thing that struck him was the sound. Chirps, whistles, and high-pitched trills filled the air, accompanied by the faint rustle of leaves. He flinched as something small darted past him, a flash of brown and white fur. He froze, his tendrils stiffening. What was that? His gaze followed the blur, and his translator clicked to life. Species: Xyrris carolinensis. Common name: squirrel. Threat level: negligible. The squirrel stopped abruptly on a low-hanging branch and stared directly at him. Its dark eyes glimmered with an intelligence that unsettled him. It twitched its nose and let out a series of rapid clicks. Xyrris staggered back, his limbs trembling. His translator emitted another message. Behavior: communicative aggression. Aggression? The squirrel launched itself from the branch, landing mere inches from Xyrris's feet. He yelped, a silent vibration that reverberated through his throat, and stumbled backward into a thorny bush. The squirrel chittered furiously, tail whipping like a banner of war, before scampering off into the underbrush. Xyrris lay still, his chest heaving, tendrils twitching in panic. His translator issued a final, flat-toned observation. Species is territorial but non-lethal. Non-lethal? He thought bitterly. His glowing fingers gripped a nearby tree for support as he rose to his feet, his pride dented more than his body. He recorded a note in his log. Hostile arboreal species, small but unnervingly bold. Proceed with extreme caution. The forest around him seemed to hum with unseen life. He moved cautiously, his footfalls crunching on dry leaves. Every sound, the snap of a twig, the flutter of wings, sent adrenaline surging through his veins. This place is alive, he realized, not with the sterile order of Thalan, but with unpredictable, chaotic energy. As Xyrris moved further from his ship, the dense trees gave way to a clearing. A soft glow illuminated a small farmhouse perched on the edge of the forest. The structure emitted faint mechanical whirs, the sound of machinery he didn't recognize. Through a window, he saw small humans, their heads bobbing in animated chatter. Outside, an adult human stood tossing a spherical object. A four-legged creature bounded after it, barking sharply. The sound was deafening to Xyrris's sensitive ears. He flinched, but his gaze remained locked on the scene. The creature retrieved the object in its jaws and returned it to the human, tail wagging furiously. The human patted its head, murmuring words that didn't register on Xyrris's translator. He narrowed his eyes, observing the mutual satisfaction between the two. Symbiosis, he noted. Possibly a master-slave dynamic. As he inched closer for a better view, the barking stopped. The creature's ears perked up, and its sharp eyes locked onto him. A low growl rumbled in its throat. Xyrris froze, every muscle in his body tensing. The creature sprinted toward him, the rapid thud of its paws on the ground echoing like a drumbeat in his head. Its bark pierced the air, a sound that reverberated in his chest like a war horn. Xyrris backed away, fumbling to activate his shield. His glowing form flickered in panic as the creature came closer. Then, just as it lunged, a sharp whistle cut through the air. "Luna, down!" a deep voice commanded. The dog, Luna, Xyrris's translator supplied, halted mid-charge. Her growl softened, replaced by an inquisitive tilt of the head. A tall figure emerged from the shadows of the farmhouse, holding up a hand to the animal. "What the hell are you?" the human muttered, stepping closer. His boots crunched against the frosty grass. Xyrris straightened, his body flickering between defensive postures and an attempt to appear non-threatening. "The human, Elliot," the translator whispered, though it offered no further data, lowered his hand cautiously. "You're not from around here," Elliot said, his voice low and steady. "And I don't just mean the forest." Xyrris raised his hand, emitting a soft, bioluminescent glow. He tapped his chest twice, a Thailani greeting of peace. Luna sniffed the air, her tail wagging tentatively now as she crept closer. Xyrris stiffened but didn't retreat. "Not hostile, huh?" Elliot said, glancing at Luna, who licked her nose and yawned, as if she were thoroughly unimpressed. "Okay, let's get you inside before you freak out the whole town." Xyrris hesitated. He looked toward the forest, then back to the warm glow spilling from the farmhouse. His translator clicked. "Shelter recommended for optimal survival." "Come on," Elliot said, gesturing with his hand. "Whatever you are, you'll be safer here than out there." Luna barked once, the sound sharp but oddly reassuring. Xyrris stepped forward cautiously, following the human and his companion. The dog trotted ahead, her tail wagging like a banner of truce. As they approached the farmhouse, Xyrris cast one last glance at the darkened forest. He had come to Earth by chance, a mute traveler lost in a cacophonous world. But as he stepped into the light of the human dwelling, a strange sensation settled over him, a blend of fear, curiosity, and the faintest spark of hope. The farmhouse smelled warm. Not the sterile, metallic warmth of Xyrris's ship, but something richer. Wood smoke, faint traces of soil, and an aroma he couldn't identify that made his insides flutter in a strangely comforting way. As he crossed the threshold, he was struck by the softness of the environment. The floor creaked underfoot. The walls radiated faint warmth from an unseen source, and the air hummed faintly with the energy of human life. Luna padded across the room, her claws tapping rhythmically on the hardwood floor. She sniffed at Xyrris once more, before flopping down near a flickering orange light that the translator identified as a fireplace. The alien studied the crackling flames with cautious curiosity, his reflective eyes narrowing as the logs popped and sizzled. Controlled combustion, he noted, though the translator didn't offer any further insights. "You can relax," Elliot said, pulling a chair closer to the fire. "You look like you're ready to bolt through the nearest wall." Xyrris hovered near the doorway, his elongated limbs drawn tightly to his body. He tapped his wrist-mounted translator, trying to signal peace, but Elliot didn't seem fazed by the alien's inability to speak. Instead, the human held out a hand, motioning toward the chair. "Sit, or hover, or whatever it is you do. Just don't burn a hole in the carpet with all that glowing." He smiled, his tone light and casual. The translator clicked. Tone, non-threatening. Interpretation, invitation. Xyrris hesitated before lowering himself onto the chair. It creaked under his weight, but the cushion was unexpectedly soft, molding around his form like clouds. His shoulders eased slightly, though his luminescent shield flickered faintly with residual anxiety. Elliot observed him, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "Not much of a talker, are you?" Xyrris tapped his translator, emitting a low chime. A mechanical voice replied, "Speech, unavailable. Communication, nonverbal." "Figures," Elliot muttered, leaning back. "All right, I'll talk, you listen. Fair deal?" The alien inclined his head slightly, his glow dimming as he tried to mimic the human's relaxed posture. The air carried a faint trace of something edible. His stomach churned uncomfortably. Food. He realized the scent was emanating from a covered dish on the nearby table. Elliot followed his gaze and chuckled. "Hungry? Can't say I know what you eat, but I've got stew. Probably not up your alley, huh?" Xyrris tapped his wrist device again, emitting a soft pulse of bioluminescent light. The translator responded, "Food intake. Non-toxic sources only." "Right," Elliot said, scratching his chin. "You don't have to trust me on the stew, but I've got water. That work for you?" He rose, crossing to a sink and filling a glass with water. The sound of running liquid, clear and unfiltered, made Xyrris tilt his head. It was such a pure, simple act, yet something about it felt profound. He accepted the glass cautiously, examining the clear liquid before taking a tentative sip. Cool, refreshing, and entirely free of the metallic tang that Thylani hydration pods infused into every drop. He nodded his thanks. As Elliot returned to his chair, Luna shifted from her spot by the fire. She moved closer to Xyrris, her head tilted inquisitively. Her fur was a patchwork of gold and white, her tail wagging softly as she sniffed at his glowing limbs. Xyrris froze, unsure whether to retreat or remain still. "Don't worry," Elliot said. "She's just curious. You're, a little weird-looking to her, but she's friendly." Xyrris didn't move. Luna's wet nose nudged his hand, and he jolted slightly, his glow flickering in a pale yellow pulse. The dog huffed softly and laid her head against his knee, her eyes closing as if declaring him harmless. "You've got her approval," Elliot said with a grin. "That's rare. Luna's a better judge of character than most people." Xyrris slowly extended a hand, his bioluminescence dimming further as he let his fingers hover just above Luna's fur. The texture was surprising, soft yet firm, alive with a warmth he couldn't explain. He pulled his hand back, and Luna simply wagged her tail in response. The translator clicked faintly in his ear. "Behavior, pacifistic engagement." "I'd take that as a compliment if I were you," Elliot said. "Luna's picky about her friends. You must be doing something right." Xyrris tilted his head, the smallest spark of curiosity creeping into his otherwise guarded expression. The bond between this human and the animal was unquantifiable. It defied the rigid utilitarian relationships of Thylon. There was no function here, no pragmatic benefit, yet it was clear that both human and dog thrived on this connection. The hum of the room shifted suddenly. A flurry of motion from a perch in the corner caught Xyrris's attention. A vibrant green and yellow creature flapped its wings, emitting a loud squawk. "Hey, weirdo! Weirdo!" the bird screeched. Xyrris's tendrils flared in alarm, and his luminescence brightened sharply. The parrot, completely unbothered, hopped to a closer perch, tilting its head. "What's the matter? You glow in the dark? You glow in the dark!" it cackled. Elliot burst into laughter, his voice filling the room like rolling thunder. "That's Piper. Don't take it personally. He insults everyone." Xyrris stared at the bird, his glow dimming as his confusion grew. The parrot squawked again, repeating its taunts with perfect mimicry. "Communicative species?" Xyrris tapped his translator, but no data registered. The translator remained silent, as if refusing to acknowledge this bizarre life form. "Piper's just showing off," Elliot said. "He's smarter than he looks. Between him and Luna, you've got the best crash course on Earth life you're ever going to get." Xyrris recorded a note in his log. Bipedal species displays multi-species coexistence. Intelligence in Earth fauna higher than anticipated. Behavior unpredictable. The alien's focus returned to the room as Elliot leaned forward, his expression softening. "So, what's your story, Glowstick? You fall out of the sky looking for help, or are you just sightseeing?" Xyrris made no response, only tapping his translator again. "Speech unavailable. it repeated. Right, Elliot muttered, scratching the back of his neck. Guess that's fair. Well, whatever brought you here, you're lucky you landed where you did. Not everyone's as understanding as me, or Luna. He smirked at the dog, who thumped her tail against the floor. Xyrris glanced down at Luna again, noting the calm rise and fall of her breathing. For the first time since landing on Earth, his glowing shield dimmed to nearly nothing. The farmhouse, though strange and alive with unpredictable creatures, felt less threatening now. There was something grounding in the simplicity of it. Firelight flickering, soft voices, and the steady companionship of a creature like Luna. As the fire crackled on, Elliot leaned back with a sigh. Well, Glowstick, I hope you're ready. If you're sticking around here, there's a lot you're going to have to learn. Xyrris didn't know what sticking around entailed, but the faint warmth that had settled in his chest earlier returned. For now, he would observe and learn. The days passed in a blur of learning and observation. Xyrris cataloged every interaction he witnessed, filling his data logs with sketches and notes. Each entry felt like an uncharted discovery, but none fascinated him more than the bond between Elliot and Luna. It wasn't simply loyalty. It was an unspoken partnership, a language of trust that needed no translator. On a brisk afternoon, the wind carried the faint tang of rain. Elliot's boots crunched on the gravel path as he called to Luna. Come on, girl. We need to check the fences before the storm hits. Xyrris followed at a distance, his long limbs nearly silent on the uneven ground. The sky above churned with ominous gray clouds, and the air was electric, heavy with the promise of thunder. Luna trotted ahead, her ears perked and her tail wagging. Elliot glanced back at Xyrris, raising a brow. You coming, Glowstick? Might as well see how Earth folks handle a storm. Xyrris hesitated but nodded. His glow pulsed faintly as he stepped onto the dirt path, his translucent skin picking up the sharp scent of wet earth. The rhythmic rustling of leaves surrounded him, their movements exaggerated by the rising wind. As they reached the far edge of the property, the faint sound of rushing water caught Xyrris's attention. His reflective eyes scanned the horizon, narrowing at the sight of a swollen stream cutting through the land. The water moved with startling speed, churning and frothing as it overflowed its banks. Damn, Elliot muttered, kneeling near the edge. Flood's worse than I thought. Luna barked, her voice sharp and urgent. She paced along the bank, nose to the ground, as if searching for something. Xyrris tilted his head, his translator clicking faintly but offering no useful input. The dog's behavior seemed frantic, her movements purposeful, yet chaotic. Then Xyrris saw it, a small figure clinging to a half-submerged log in the middle of the torrent. A child, no older than 7, their cries nearly drowned out by the roar of the water. Xyrris froze, his tendrils stiffening in alarm. Kid! Elliot shouted, sprinting to the edge of the bank. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade, but the child was too far to hear. Hold on! Xyrris watched as Elliot yanked off his jacket, preparing to wade into the current. The human's face was set with determination, but the water's ferocity was undeniable. Luna barked again, standing at the edge as if awaiting orders. Luna, go! Elliot commanded, his voice firm. Without hesitation, Luna plunged into the icy water, her sleek body cutting through the current with surprising strength. Xyrris's heart, or the Thyalani equivalent, thundered in his chest. The scene felt chaotic, overwhelming, every sound amplified. The rush of the water, the child's sobs, Elliot's shouts. He could almost taste the tension in the air, sharp and metallic. Luna paddled furiously, her head bobbing as the current threatened to drag her under. Xyrris's instinct screamed at him to retreat, to flee the unpredictable chaos of this alien world, but something rooted him in place. He stared at the dog, a creature so small and vulnerable, risking its life without hesitation. Come on, Luna! Elliot yelled, his fists clenched at his sides. His boots sank into the mud as he paced along the bank, unable to take his eyes off the dog. Luna reached the log, her claws scrabbling against the slick wood. The child clung to her neck, their small hands gripping her fur like a lifeline. Xyrris felt a surge of something he couldn't name, a raw electric current that seemed to pulse through his very being. But the log shifted. The torrent slammed against it, threatening to break it loose. Luna barked, her movements frantic as she tried to keep the child balanced. Xyrris's translator buzzed with a faint warning. Structural instability detected. Elliot shouted again, but his voice was drowned out by a sudden crack of thunder. The log tilted, and the child's grip faltered. Xyrris's tendrils twitched as instinct took over. He activated his bioluminescent shield, the glow cutting through the storm's gloom like a beacon, and sprinted to the water's edge. His long fingers tapped at the device on his wrist, emitting a series of pulses that sent stabilizing energy waves into the current. The log steadied for a moment, giving Luna the opening she needed to guide the child toward the shore. Elliot moved first, wading into the shallows to pull the child to safety. "I've got you. You're okay," he said, his voice choked with relief. He carried the trembling child to dry ground, wrapping them in his jacket. Luna staggered out of the water behind them, her fur plastered to her body, her breathing labored. "Good girl," Elliot whispered, kneeling beside her. He ran his hands over her drenched fur, his expression a mix of pride and gratitude. Luna licked his face weakly, her tail wagging despite her exhaustion. Xyrris stood frozen, his shield flickering as the adrenaline began to fade. The scene before him felt like something out of a story, a myth of bravery and sacrifice, of creatures bound by something deeper than instinct. He recorded every detail, the water dripping from Luna's fur, the way the child buried their face in Elliot's shoulder, the quiet strength in the human's eyes as he comforted them. "You," Elliot began, turning to Xyrris. His voice was rough, but his tone carried weight. "That thing you did, stabilizing the log, you saved them." Xyrris tilted his head, his glow dimming as he processed the words. He raised a hand, emitting a soft pulse from his translator. "Assistance, mutual effort." "Yeah," Elliot said, his lips curving into a faint smile. "Mutual effort. That's a hell of a way to put it." Luna barked softly, her tail sweeping the ground. Xyrris looked down at her, his translucent eyes reflecting her unwavering gaze. He crouched, extending a hand once more. This time, he didn't flinch as his fingers brushed her damp fur. Luna leaned into the touch, her body warm despite the chill in the air. Elliot stood, holding the child close. "We should get inside before the storm gets worse. Come on." As they made their way back to the farmhouse, Xyrris lagged behind, his mind swirling with thoughts. He had never seen anything like this, a creature so willing to risk its life for another species. On Thalen, such an act would be considered illogical, a waste of resources. But here it was. Expected. Celebrated. Back inside, Elliot dried Luna with a towel, murmuring praises as she wagged her tail. The child, now wrapped in a blanket, sat quietly near the fire, their eyes heavy with sleep. Xyrris sat in the corner, his glowing form casting faint shadows on the walls. He opened his data log, his fingers moving quickly as he sketched Luna and Elliot, the child cradled in the background. He paused, staring at the image, and for the first time since landing on Earth, he felt something stir within him. This planet is extraordinary. The storm had passed, leaving the Earth bathed in a soft, golden light. The air smelled clean, the kind of freshness that follows a heavy rain. Droplets clung to every surface, glinting like jewels in the sunlight. Xyrris sat quietly in the farmhouse, his glowing fingers tracing intricate patterns on the edges of his sketchpad. The scene from the flood rescue still lingered in his mind, the bravery, the selflessness. These creatures were unlike anything he had ever encountered. Elliot leaned against the kitchen counter, his hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. "You've been here a while now, Glowstick," he said, his tone teasing but warm. "I don't suppose you're planning on making Earth your permanent address?" Xyrris looked up, his head tilting slightly in acknowledgement. He tapped his translator, which clicked softly. "Departure required. Repairs complete." The words, though mechanical, seemed to hang in the air like a bittersweet goodbye. Luna, lying near the fireplace, raised her head, her ears twitching. She seemed to sense the meaning behind Xyrris's words. Piper squawked from his perch, adding his own commentary. Glowstick's leaving. Glowstick's leaving. Elliot smirked at the parrot before turning back to Xyrris. Well, I can't say I'm surprised. A ship like yours doesn't exactly scream, settle down. He paused, his smile fading slightly. But I gotta admit, I'll miss having you around. You're different. In a good way. Xyrris nodded, his glow dimming to a faint pulse. He gestured toward Luna, then tapped his translator again. Bond, remarkable. Earth creatures, essential. Documentation, incomplete. Essential, huh? Elliot said, rubbing Luna's head. Yeah, they are. But I think you already know that. Luna stood and padded over to Xyrris, her tail wagging gently. She nudged his hand with her nose, and for a moment, the alien froze. Then slowly, he placed a hand on her head, his bioluminescence flickering softly. She likes you, Elliot said, his voice low. That's not something she does for just anyone. Xyrris stepped back, his glowing fingers lingering in the air as if reluctant to break the connection. He turned toward the door, his movements deliberate. Elliot followed, holding the door open as Xyrris stepped outside. The forest was alive with sound, the rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, the faint buzz of insects. Xyrris's ship stood at the edge of the clearing, its sleek form gleaming in the sunlight. He hesitated, turning back to Elliot and Luna. The dog sat obediently by her owner's side, her eyes fixed on the alien. You're not just leaving with data, are you? Elliot asked, his tone more serious now. You're taking something more important. Xyrris tapped his translator one last time. Understanding, shared. Purpose, growth. Elliot nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Good luck, Glowstick. Don't forget to send a postcard. Xyrris entered his ship, the door sealing behind him with a soft hiss. As he powered up the engines, he glanced out the viewport. Luna and Elliot stood together, framed by the golden light of the setting sun. For the first time in his life, Xyrris felt a strange pang, a reluctance to leave. But his mission wasn't over. The ship rose smoothly into the air, the hum of its engines blending with the sounds of Earth. Xyrris's gaze lingered on the planet below until it was a distant, glittering sphere. Back on Talon, Xyrris's return was met with quiet efficiency. His people, sleek and logical, moved with purpose as they processed his findings. The sterile halls of the research center felt colder than usual, the absence of Earth's vibrant chaos stark and unwelcoming. Xyrris stood before the Council of Minds, his glowing form casting faint reflections on the polished metal floor. He activated his holoprojector, displaying the recordings he had meticulously compiled. Images of Earth's animals filled the room, Luna rescuing the child, Piper mimicking voices, a flock of birds soaring through a stormy sky. These creatures, Xyrris's translator intoned, demonstrate intelligence, bravery, and unparalleled adaptability. Their bond with humans enhances survival and fosters unity, the council murmured softly, their voices a harmonic blend of curiosity and skepticism. Creatures are subsentient, one counselor said, their tone clipped. Their behaviors are instinctive. Xyrris tapped his projector, displaying a close-up of Luna pulling the child from the flood. Instinct does not explain this, the translator replied. This is a choice, an act of courage. The room fell silent. The images shifted, showing Elliot and Luna together, their connection palpable even through the hologram. The counselors exchanged glances, their skepticism giving way to contemplation. Further research is required, the lead counselor finally said, but your findings are intriguing. Weeks later, Xyrris returned to Earth, this time accompanied by a small team of Tylani researchers. Their sleek, luminous forms stood out starkly against the rugged terrain as they emerged from their ship. Elliot greeted them with a raised brow and a bemused grin. Brought friends this time, huh, Glowstick? He said, crossing his arms. Luna barked happily, bounding over to Xyrris as if he'd never left. The alien crouched, his fingers glowing faintly as he greeted the dog. This is, unexpected, Elliot continued, eyeing the group of aliens. What's the plan? Another round of observations? Xyrris tapped his translator. Request, collaboration, training, required. Elliot tilted his head, his expression shifting from curiosity to realization. You want to learn how to train animals? Xyrris nodded, his glow steady. Application, interspecies missions, potential, limitless. Elliot whistled, shaking his head. Well, that's a first. All right, Glowstick, let's see what we can do. Over the following weeks, Elliot demonstrated the basics of training, using Luna and Piper as examples. The Thailani researchers watched with fascination, their glowing forms flickering with excitement as they recorded every detail. Xyrris remained at the forefront, his sketches becoming more intricate, his understanding deepening. But the most startling discovery came one afternoon in the forest. A Thailani researcher pointed out a flock of native bird-like creatures perched in the treetops. They were sleek and black, their sharp eyes glinting in the sunlight. Species, Thailani avifauna, the translator clicked. Status, non-animal, untrainable. Untrainable, huh? Elliot said, smirking. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a handful of breadcrumbs. He whistled softly, a high-pitched trill that caught the creature's attention. To the alien's astonishment, one of the birds swooped down, landing cautiously on Elliot's outstretched hand. He held it steady, murmuring softly as the bird pecked at the crumbs. Well, would you look at that? Elliot said, his voice laced with amusement. Guess your untrainable species just needed a little patience. Xyrris stepped closer, his glow brightening as he watched the interaction. The bird's sharp eyes met his, and for a moment he felt a connection, a flicker of understanding that transcended language. The discovery sent ripples through the Thailani team. If these native creatures, once dismissed as untrainable, could form bonds, then their potential extended far beyond what they had imagined. As Xyrris prepared to leave Earth once more, he stood beside Elliot, watching Luna chase Piper across the yard. The alien tapped his translator. Partnership, invaluable. Gratitude, eternal. Elliot grinned, clapping him on the shoulder. You're all right, Glowstick. Take care out there. Xyrris boarded his ship, his sketches and recordings more comprehensive than ever. As he ascended into the sky, he glanced back at the planet below. It wasn't just a world of strange creatures anymore. It was a world of possibilities, a testament to the power of connection. This time, he wasn't leaving Earth behind. He was carrying it forward. The vastness of space stretched endlessly beyond the viewport of Xyrris's ship, the stars shimmering like scattered embers against an infinite void. This time, he wasn't traveling alone. Following his discoveries on Earth, the Thailani had dispatched a coalition fleet to bridge the gap between their sterile logic and humanity's chaotic brilliance. On board were dozens of researchers, engineers, and now, thanks to Xyrris's insistence, a small group of Earth-trained animals, including a sharp-eyed crow named Shadow and a golden retriever called Milo. As the fleet approached the edge of the neutral zone, Xyrris's translator buzzed faintly in his ear. Incoming transmission from Earth delegation. The human ambassador's voice filled the chamber, rich and warm like the crackle of a distant fire. This is Ambassador Elliot Graham, representing Earth. We've received your signal and are ready to discuss the joint initiative. Xyrris's glow brightened slightly at the sound of Elliot's voice. His translator emitted a response. Acknowledged. Proceeding to rendezvous coordinates. Moments later, the human flagship came into view, its bulky, utilitarian design a stark contrast to the sleek elegance of Thailani vessels. Xyrris couldn't help but admire the humans' practicality. While their ships lacked aesthetic finesse, they exuded a sense of rugged reliability, much like the people who built them. In the meeting chamber aboard the human flagship, the atmosphere buzzed with tension and anticipation. Xyrris stood silently at the edge of the room, his luminescent form casting soft reflections on the polished metal walls. Elliot, now wearing the crisp uniform of a diplomat, strode confidently into the room, flanked by a small contingent of Earth's best and brightest. Xyrris, Elliot said, his smile breaking the formality of the moment. Good to see you again, buddy. Xyrris dipped his head in acknowledgement, his translator responding. Greetings, mutual. Partnership progressing. Elliot chuckled. Always straight to the point. He gestured to the gathered Thailani counselors and researchers. Well, Let's get started. I'm sure you're all wondering why we brought these little guys along." He nodded to Milo and Shadow, who sat calmly beside him. The Thailani delegates murmured softly, their glowing forms flickering with faint skepticism. One counselor spoke, their voice even but tinged with doubt. "These creatures, their inclusion in this alliance remains unclear. Their utility is not yet proven." Elliot raised a brow, his smile turning slightly mischievous. "Oh, you'll see soon enough." He pressed a button on his wrist communicator, and a hologram flickered to life in the center of the room. It displayed footage from a recent intergalactic rescue mission, Milo leading a team through a collapsed asteroid mine, his keen sense of smell guiding them to trapped survivors. Another clip showed Shadow darting through narrow corridors, delivering critical messages between ships under fire. The final scene was from Earth, a montage of Luna's heroic flood rescue, framed with Xyrris's original sketches. "These animals," Elliot said, his tone firm now, "aren't just companions. They're partners. Their loyalty, intelligence, and adaptability are unmatched. And the bond we share with them, that's what sets us apart." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Xyrris watched as the Thailani counselors exchanged glances, their skepticism wavering. One delegate finally spoke, their tone measured. "The evidence is compelling. But does this bond extend beyond your species? Can this partnership be replicated?" Elliot smirked, his gaze shifting to Xyrris. "Why don't we let our friend here answer that?" Xyrris stepped forward, his luminescence steady and purposeful. He activated his own holographic projector, displaying footage from the Thailani training program he had initiated. The room watched in stunned silence as sleek, black bird-like creatures native to Thailand, a species once dismissed as untrainable, performed coordinated tasks alongside human trainers. "These creatures," Xyrris's translator intoned, "demonstrate latent intelligence. Partnership with humans unlocks potential previously overlooked." The hologram shifted, showing the birds delivering tools to Thailani engineers, relaying messages across sprawling research facilities, and even guiding lost travelers through hazardous terrain. The final image was a striking portrait of a Thailani child holding one of the birds, their faces mirroring mutual curiosity and trust. The room erupted in murmurs, the counselors leaning forward in their seats. For the first time, Xyrris saw something he had never witnessed among his people: wonder. The meeting adjourned with a unanimous decision to proceed with the joint initiative. Xyrris and Elliot stood at the edge of the flagship's observation deck, gazing out at the stars. Milo and Shadow sat quietly at their feet, the dog's tail wagging lazily while the crow preened its feathers. "Gotta admit," Elliot said, breaking the silence, "you've come a long way from that terrified alien running from squirrels." Xyrris tilted his head, his glow pulsing faintly. His translator clicked softly. "Progress, mutual, understanding, shared." Elliot laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Yeah, I guess we both learned a thing or two. But you know what the real lesson is?" Xyrris's glow brightened slightly, signaling curiosity. "It's not about dominance," Elliot said, his voice softening. "It's about trust, connection, the strength to rely on someone, or something, beyond yourself. That's what makes us human. And apparently, it's what makes us valuable to the galaxy." Xyrris considered this, his glowing fingers tracing faint patterns in the air. He turned to Elliot, his translator emitting a single word: agreement. The alliance was soon tested. A distress signal from a nearby colony brought both fleets rushing to its aid. The colony was under siege by an unknown alien force, their advanced technology rendering traditional defenses useless. In the chaos of the battlefield, it was the unlikeliest heroes who turned the tide. Shadow soared through enemy lines, evading fire as it delivered critical intel to the human and Thailani forces. Milo led a group of trapped colonists to safety, his instincts guiding them through a maze of debris. Xyrris, piloting a sleek Thailani fighter, coordinated with Elliot from the human flagship. Their strategies blended human adaptability with Thailani precision, creating a synergy that overwhelmed the enemy. As the dust settled, the colonists emerged from their shelters, their faces etched with relief and gratitude. Among them were children clutching Earth-trained dogs, their smiles lighting up the war-torn landscape. Back aboard the Thyalani flagship, the council gathered once more. This time there was no skepticism, only respect. "The Alliance," the lead counselor declared, their tone reverent, "has proven the strength of unity. Humanity's capacity for connection is a gift we had underestimated. We will carry this lesson forward." Xyrris stood at the center of the chamber, his glowing form steady and resolute. His translator clicked softly, amplifying his thoughts for all to hear. Humanity, unique, strength, found in bonds, legacy, transformative. The words hung in the air, a beacon of hope and purpose. Xyrris felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his journey had bridged worlds and reshaped destinies. As the fleets prepared to depart, Xyrris stood once more beside Elliot on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a canvas of infinite possibilities. "You did good, Glowstick," Elliot said, clapping him on the shoulder. "I think the galaxy's starting to see what we're really made of." Xyrris's glow brightened, his translator emitting a single heartfelt word: gratitude. As the Thailani fleet ascended into the stars, Xyrris glanced back at the Earth one last time. It was no longer just a planet to him. It was a symbol, a reminder that the simplest bonds could inspire the greatest change. And as the stars enveloped him, he carried that symbol forward, determined to share its light with the galaxy.